You're very welcome to this video. Is it true that deep down Russians know that the Bucha massacre and other massacres we're going to discover is real, and that they just don't care because the victims are inferior? That's what's being claimed by a Twitter thread that's gone viral. I'm going to break it down because it's half wrong, but half right. And breaking it down is important, of course, not just because Russia is culturally and politically self-immolating, assaulting its neighbor, but because Russia going down and collapsing politically or disintegrating politically and trying to save itself could be something that endangers us a little bit or even a lot. So this stuff matters. So is it true that deep down Russians do know? Or is it truer that in fact they don't have the information, they have no idea? Well, let's put it this way. If you're my neighbor and you broke my fence because you were playing with your kids, and I say, oh, I'm so sorry, could we look at the fence? Maybe we can sort of split the, repair. Hope you have a good day. And you say, no, it didn't happen, not me. Before I finish my sentence, I'm going to suspect that you in fact know full well that you broke the fence, but you're not interested in going there. You're not interested in taking responsibility for it. Now, that is a lot of Russians. That is how they answer these questions. Have you seen what's happened? No, it didn't happen. No, fake. No. He didn't even let me finish my sentence. He didn't even let me finish showing you the stuff. No, didn't happen. Couldn't have happened. Didn't happen. Not me, not us, not... No. So that is obviously an inability to face something. That is obviously finding something unbearable. That is obviously denial. That is obviously shoving something deeper inside you and not wanting to see what it is. So I think that where this takes us is to a sense that a lot of Russians are, even if they don't know exactly what's going on, suspicious that something fishy has happened and that things aren't what they seem. And even the most extreme example, which you might say isn't terribly blameworthy, and extreme doesn't mean uncommon. Extreme just means situationally tricky in terms of the people involved processing the truth. But even these extreme examples allow for some room for suspiciousness. I mean, just imagine a couple, both of them are working hard, kids, outside of the main urban centers of Russia. Not enough to do the 2 full-time jobs. One of them does extra work, some deliveries, maybe some taxi after work. They're finally having dinner. It's late. They're exhausted. They're uncertain about their future. And in the background, something is on. The TV, the radio, some conventional internet channel. They don't think about VPNs. They don't really know how to get around YouTube properly. It's in the background. They half listen. It seems to say that the Russians are doing something that's good there in Ukraine. Oh, it's time to go to bed. I'm exhausted. So it isn't easy. So let's not sort of, mess around with ourselves. It's not easy for that kind of demographic to discover what's going on. It's tempting to say it's 2 clicks. What are you going to do? It's the purchase of some cheap VPN. I think stressed and busy people are very stressed and busy. But I think even those people have some chink of suspicion about what's going on. And then as you slide to folks who have more time available and more resources available to discover, now these are a minority, but as we move toward them, the degree of suspicion increases. And so I do think, therefore, that it's fair to say that most Russians who would tell you that Bucha is false know that something is wrong. So that's how I would put it. So I do think that there are going to be millions of Russians who we're going to have to put sort of closer to the box of they just don't know. But I think that most people who are denying it are going to be put in some kind of intermediate box where we say, So what's happening, therefore, is that they have this thing that they quarter know, half know, and that knowledge has retreated into the subconscious. Well, what could bring it out, and what's keeping it in there? And I think here we jump to the other part of this viral Twitter thread, and that's that the Russians don't just know it deep down, and we've got to be nuanced. We don't want to say they really, really know. We want to say, yeah, I mean, there's enough going on there for us to be suspicious of most of their denials. But as we jump over to the second question, well, in fact, they don't just know, but they don't care, and they think Ukrainians are inferior, and so it's okay to kill them. Here, I think it's important to push back and not fall for understandable anti-imperialist, anti-colonial anger, which has its place because Russia has been behaving badly for decades in its different incarnations to its neighbors. So I think that what's wrong with the, oh, they just don't care, in fact, they kind of think it's fine answer is that it's more complex than that, and very different things to the I don't care picture are going on. The Russian sociologist, who we may have at some point on our main channel for a chat, Grigory Yudin, always likes to say in this situation that coming to face the truth about a Bucha has to be connected with a situation where you don't feel you're in a complete corner if you admit Bucha without any practical avenues for action. So I admit it, but that leaves me with no practical course of action to take this admission any further. At work, I might be asked whether I know Ukrainians, and if I do, I might be pushed to not being in touch with them. All the independent media is gone. There are small numbers of denunciations beginning to happen in organizations, very, very small, but it's like something that can poison, a swimming pool with a couple of drops. If you know somebody's going to grass you up to the government, you really do feel transformed in what you're able to say. So, can protest work? Well, no. I mean, obviously it can't. I'll just get arrested and, I'll be in prison. So there is no practical sort of avenue. There is no chink in this thing that's engulfed me, to which I can practically direct the recognition of that truth. So that's one thing that's going on. A second thing that's going on is just fear. And I do think that there is this a third pillar worth talking about, which we've already touched on, which is something like trauma. And part of the expression of that trauma might well be ugly and destructive impulses. Destructive impulses toward anybody who's in Russia's way. And I do think that this Z thing, this Z symbol, is an expression of this. I do actually think that anybody who uses the Z symbol is likely to be partly using it as a liberatory device, a device for liberating out destructive energies. But there's very little mobilization around Z in Russia. It's not mobilizing the vast majority of people. And certainly in the big urban centers, you're not much more likely to see a Z on somebody's pram or on somebody's car than you are an anti-war gesture. So I do think there's quite a bit of room for this sort of destructive energy, but I don't think it's engulfing the whole population, and I don't think that it's truly mobilizing many people at the moment. That might change. And of course, we know from conversations on the main channel that authoritarian regimes are more associated with demobilized populations, and totalitarian regimes are associated with more mobilization. And Putin is stuck between a rock and a hard place at the moment because he desperately wants to avoid mobilization, but he needs, because he doesn't want to politicize his citizens because they might turn on him, but he also doesn't want to, sorry, this is even more important. He doesn't want to mobilize citizens in case they become more radical and other political actors develop who constitute a threat to Putin. Not a threat to his stay in power, but a threat to his stability. On the one hand. On the other hand, Putin wants at least some mobilization. I mean, otherwise, there's just zero energy behind this war. So where have we got to, basically, with this mumble of mine? I think we've got to the point that it's pretty true that deep down, way more Russians know what's going on than they're going to tell you. But I also don't think that the percentage of Russians who think that Ukrainians are ethnically inferior is very big at all. It's really, really not big. And so I think that this Twitter thread is wrong. We're going to do something different that we haven't done in this conversation soonishly on the main channel, and that is properly look at what the Russian people think. And that's really complex. It hasn't clearly been done in abbreviated video form yet, maybe even at all in English. And that's because it requires not just cultural explanation, but it requires, if you like, social explanation, sociology. What happens to humans when they are in a Germany in the late 30s? What happens to them in terms of how they process any contrary thoughts to what the external environment dictates? We need a bit of sociological explanation, therefore, and not just cultural explanation. We're going to do that because it's a fascinating story about, not just where the Russians are, but how they got there. And if we look at how they got there, we're also going to learn lessons about how we should avoid drifting toward places like where the Russians have ended up now. Enough ranting. Thanks for watching. We're going to have something more systematic, I hope, on Tuesday on the main channel. Fingers crossed. Bye-bye.